Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town. Okay, Tyler, we've been doing this for a little bit, and every once in a while we have a bleed over, right? Every once in a while we get a guest that cannot be contained even in the long form podcast that is the richest men in town, and we got to go back to back. We did that with Gordon DeWitt. This is part 2. We just hung out another couple of hours with this guy. Man, what is Gordon teaching you right now?
I mean, I've just become like, 4 hours together, or give or take. I've become a Gordon DeWitt fan. I just, I think that his perspective on life and his ability to kind of laugh at some things but his deep insights into how to continue the struggle of trying to become a better version of yourself is just so powerful, so insightful. I mean, there were things tonight that I had written down that I just felt like this is what I want. He talks about the concept of God being big enough to handle our own displeasure with maybe God at times and struggles. And I love that, right?
Yeah, I think, hey, and we've often said that the program works when our guests, more of them, less of us, is a great formula. But I got to tell you, I really love what you shared in our conversations with Gordon, just about sitting by somebody and saying, I get it. And Gordon talked about this ministry of presence, and just
love that. Yeah.
Taking some kind of action instead of like thoughts and prayers, or, hey, if you need anything, if there's anything I can do for you, how about do the work?
Yeah.
And find the thing that might make sense. And the cool thing, he even pointed out, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it misses the mark, it's something that's going to let somebody know that you're thinking about them. And this guy's acquainted with that journey, right? He lets us in. The DeWitt family's been through some things. And instead of being bitter, they become an asset. They become a blessing to people.
Absolutely. And I love that he acknowledges that bitterness that was there, right? That he was able to acknowledge that and kind of shift, right? And I just think that it's a powerful reminder for everybody that sometimes we find ourselves in a spot that is uncomfortable, that is unfair, right? That is hard to deal with, but we can still move forward. And even and Gordon paints a picture of what that looks like, and sometimes it doesn't look very smooth. It looks a little rocky, right?
Yeah, to the DeWitt family, keep going, right? So in the end, we just hung out for 4 hours with a really proud dad.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, and a really humble husband who understands the value and the gem that is his marriage.
Yeah.
And he lets us in, right? He lets us in a little bit on what it takes to keep that marriage thriving. Not the word he used, but we'll let the listeners experience what Gordon dropped on that. But we are so appreciative of folks like Gordon DeWitt. I'm just appreciative of the things that I feel, right, when I hang out with people like Gordon. I'm big on this idea right now of like life is about seeing something or hearing something that's going to make us feel something, that's going to make us do something. And this episode tonight did that for me. I'm going to walk out of here with a renewed commitment to be better, right? Be
Amen.
better than yesterday. 51%, right? Like whatever it takes. We gotta be winning, and we gotta be pushing against that force that wants us to be bitter or to settle or to be miserable. And I think that struggle became real in our time with Gordon. So Tyler Gould, I love you, man. Good to hang out with you. Bring on the most wonderful time of the year, especially for folks, for fans of It's a Wonderful Life and George Bailey. It is about Bailey. It is not about Potter, right? It is about doing those things that are going to keep us in service to other people and keep us striving to be better. And Gordon DeWitt is all about that. So to our listeners, thank you for your support. Happy holidays. And enjoy this episode, round 2 with Gordon DeWitt on the richest man in town. Okay, are you ready for this? This confession is going to pain me.
Oh, dude, I love.
Are you ready for this?
I love this segment of our show. It's Confessions by Mike Freeman.
Painful confession.
Yeah, this is my favorite segment.
No turkey bowl this year.
Ooh. Okay, let's analyze for a second.
Sit in that for a second.
Yeah, let's analyze this. Was this because you didn't want to injure yourself?
No, absolutely not. So,
okay.
Root cause, like if you're my therapist, you're like, if you're Nick Anderson and you're my life coach,
yes,
right? Shout out to Anderson Coaching.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because my wingman's gone.
That is tough, man.
Dave Freeman serving a mission in Brazil, right? Thanksgiving comes up, and so the heart definitely isn't in it, but I do have a young, impressionable nephew that is there and he's ready to roll, but he's coming out of his high school football season and transitioning into basketball, and he's a basketball prospect, and his dad is the coach, and he had an injury that ended his football season premature, and he's ready to transition to basketball, and the injury is kind of healing. So the dad was like, I don't want him to play. So to honor his dad, we found something else to do.
What? Okay. What did you do?
Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Oh, no, you didn't, dude. You did not turn on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Hey, don't sleep on the Rockettes. Don't sleep on the Rockettes.
Man. I'm 49 years old. Never once have I seen the Macy's Thanksgiving Day
Parade. It is
an
American tradition, I'm told. I just learned that watching the broadcast. And really, just a heads up, the broadcast was just a commercial for the network that was covering the parade. That's all that was.
I mean, can you? Okay, look, I've been.
No, I thought of days of yore, right? Where I'd go down to San Diego and it'd be like 2 fields and like King of the Court and the whole bit. And then I thought of blizzard days in Utah and I broken finger and saw, all of the stuff. Yeah.
I will say,
I thought of all that, and I'm rocking the stuff. Literally, I brought a pink shirt because rule number 1, they got to see you. Rule number 2, when they throw it to you, you got to catch it.
Amen.
If you're playing among strangers, you got to be visible and you got to catch the ball. Anyways, absolutely. I'm ready. And then conversation with the dad is like, look, I really don't want him to do that. We need to talk him down from this. I'm like, cool.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. I see the judgment.
I am judging hard. I actually played for 3.5 hours on Thanksgiving morning with a torn ACL. No ACL, as a matter of fact. I have 0 ACL.
You got surgery coming.
I got surgery coming. And I'm sitting here. What is the date today? December 3rd. I am still paying the price on that knee. It is sore as could be.
And you did it.
Did it, man.
And nobody on the field knew that they're really facing a 65% Tyler Gould.
Dude, at 100%, I would be just a step behind everybody. Probably. No, but it was a good time.
So you represented enough for both of us. And I represented our demographic in the watching of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Now, I will say,
those balloons are amazing, dude.
I've never seen it, dude. I don't know anything about it. I have been to the Rose Parade on several occasions.
Oh, and you've done that in person.
In person. You haven't done that with us. The Freeman Goulds have not been at the Rose Parade.
No, I've never done the Rose Parade in person.
I mean, I would have never done it had I not been harassed for about 20 years by my brother-in-law to go. And I finally caved in. I went like 4 or 5 years in a row. It's a great time. It's
Yeah.
a great time.
Because
The
it's
night
not, yeah,
before
it's
the
not
Rose
on the
Parade,
bucket. It's not on the bucket.
no, it's not on anybody's bucket. It's like this
It's a
hidden gem.
sleeper.
It's a sleeper, man. Night before you go to the Rose Parade, all right, you stand out on Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, California. Cars drive up and down that. It's like a cruise, and people on the side of the street are putting shaving cream on tortillas and throwing them at the cars. Makes no sense. It's a thing, and my kids loved it.
Shaving cream, not sour cream.
No, just shaving cream on
Barbasol.
Yep, on a tortilla, chuck at the car, get it to stick. And that's the game.
That's the night before?
That's the night before. And then you come back the next morning, you freeze for a little while, and then you bug out.
Okay.
It's an experience, man. Good or bad, it's an experience. I can tell you. So,
well, but I mean, it's been a consecutive thing. So maybe it's like Disneyland, right? Like with kids, it makes it richer or something.
100%. I mean, look, the night before, the kids felt like they were doing something very illegal, and they were having a blast doing it. And so that was great. And then the day of the Rose Parade is impressive, right? In person. These
floats, I mean, it's got to be impressive because it's all flowers, right? I mean,
it's impressive. But the kids are since out of the house, and we don't do the Rose Parade that much anymore. So that's where we're at. But
okay.
But yeah, well, that's interesting, Mike Freeman. That I thought maybe you had like a rousing round of like cards or like a something, but it was the Thanksgiving Day parade, man. It's like, of all the things I would have guessed, that would never.
That just makes it worse. That just makes it worse. But
I can only imagine.
But huge props in the mother-in-law department, because I'm a potato peeler. There's something therapeutic about peeling potatoes. And so I literally attacked the potatoes. I peeled all of them for our mashed potatoes. So there you go.
Hey, that's something, man.
Yeah, mopping, mowing, and peeling, man, it just puts me in a spot. Mentally, wow. I can think about things. I don't know. It's weird.
I love it. I can tell you that I do enjoy the mowing, but the mopping and the potato peeling, not my bag. So
yeah.
Well, listen, I'm glad that I'm thankful that we're back together, right? In the spirit of Thanksgiving, that here we are.
Well, happy belated birthday, right?
Yeah.
And then we threw in some, your birthday, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, all good reasons to take a break.
Ricky's birthday was in there as well.
Ricky's the Ricker. Celebrates a birthday.
Yeah. So yeah, we've had a little bit of a break, and now we're back. And look, the last time we were together, the yet to be released episode 1 of Gordon DeWitt, which will be dropping on Monday, I believe.
Yeah.
The yet to be released episode 1 of Gordon DeWitt. It was a great time. We laughed, we cried, we learned a few things. And then Gordon left us on a cliffhanger. He kind of tried to do this whole like, here's a cool little nugget and I'm out the door. See you guys later. And as we've learned, that doesn't fly on the richest man in town. You leave a nugget, we drag you back in, and we have you explain, right? So
literally, right? Like in the notes, it says part 2.
100%. Yeah.
Like it's like to be continued right here.
Exactly. So that's what we got going on tonight. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Like, so our circles have, I've actually bumped into Gordon in a couple of places, and he's probably thinking I'm stalking him. I mean, because some of them are professional, and then some, like, he's got a son who's in a big basketball tournament here this weekend, Harlan Carter, and so I'm excited to get him on, and we'll check in with him and make sure that we get the update on how his son's basketball team did. His son coming back from ACL, right? Wow, yeah. ACL recovery. So really looking forward to some basketball season with his son. So it's kind of fun to see Gordon around. I definitely do get a lot of love for Gordon in this community, and I think that his episodes are going to be quite the rage up here in Redding.
Well, I certainly would never classify It is stalking. I mean, we call it keeping tabs on our guests, right? It's much
because
more
we can't
safe
chip
that
them.
way. That's right.
If we could chip them, then we could back off a little bit, right?
That's right.
But the Mounties always get their guy. Richest men in town. We're kind of like Mounties.
100%. I mean,
I don't know what that is.
I don't either. It's a guy in a red jacket on a horse, I think.
Yeah.
Something in Canada. All right. To all our Canadian guests, please fill us in on how the Mounties work. With that, why don't we maybe Gordon can shed some light.
Let's get this guy in here.
All right, let's do it.
Part deux.
Which is a shout out to our French Canadian friends.
French Canadian. Look at us being inclusive, right? Just reaching out. Our friends to the north of us are loving us right now.
I mean, we have a huge following in Canada, a huge following. So it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, I'm thinking in my mind, I've got maple syrup, they're funny, and the Mounties.
And hockey, right? We throw hockey in. We'll give them credit for some hockey.
Yeah, I still can't watch that stuff though.
You can't watch hockey.
Like maybe my brain isn't fast enough. I can't process the puck, man.
All right. Have you ever been to a live hockey game?
No, I've actually heard that that's the greatest sporting event around, live hockey.
And it is. I mean, yeah. I don't know about the greatest. I'm just a sports guy, so I'll pretty much watch anything right? But hockey is fantastic live. It is fantastic live.
He's not lying to you, Mike.
You agree?
I am actually in both of your camps with you, Mike. That don't know if I'm paying, whatever to go to see the Sharks, even though I'm sure they're awesome for the same reason. But to Tyler's point, we were gifted tickets at some point to the Stockton Heat, which is a minor league hockey. And everybody, our daughter who was 7 at the time, all the way to my wife, they want to go back. Like my wife's like asking for season tickets. I'm like, we're not driving to Stockton 2 times. Like, guys, come on. Like, what are we doing? But it was rad, dude.
Hey, no offense.
I totally agree.
No offense to our friends in Stockton, but I think your life insurance agent would want to know if you had season tickets in Stockton, and
you got to turn that up, right. Yeah, you
don't
go to the outlets in Stockton. I mean, that's just wisdom. So
wow.
No offense. I love our brothers and sisters down there.
We just lost 3 listeners down there.
Yeah,
we did. Yeah, sorry guys. When you check the listener map, like decrease in the Central Valley.
I'm watching the numbers as we speak. It's dropping precipitously simply for the commentary. But I will say, like, I love hockey, live hockey for sure. NHL hockey's great, but honestly, the San Diego Gulls, which is a minor league team, we've been several times. Those are maybe better than the NHL. It's just wild action.
Okay, hold on. So here's in my mind. In my mind, if I'm going to a live hockey game, I think I got to be on the glass? Like, don't you have to look like, because the slapping and the thing, all that.
That is a thing.
It's easy to detach from the action. So we actually got to move up. Again, I don't remember why, because I'm old, but we got to move up to like the 3rd row. And it's kind of like any other sporting event. You're able to detach, and not in a good way if you're trying to enjoy the action. That ability exists, if you're whatever 20, 30, 40 rows up or in the top deck or whatever. Yeah. But dude, from the 3rd row, again, and that's probably what got my wife and our daughter and the boy, like everybody was in that 3rd row, like where you can hear them like yelling at each other and trying to just harm each other, and was awesome.
Are there instances where a live puck is slung into the crowd?
100%. Absolutely.
Because like Major League Baseball has gone with the net, right? How is hockey cool with like
there are nets? There are nets in hockey, but there's still opportunity for it to end up in the crowd, right? So it does happen. Not like on a slap shot, 150 miles an hour coming at you.
So. I feel like I've seen the glass shatter. I know from people, but perhaps from a puck as well.
Yes. Yeah. So, you don't really want to try to barehand that bad boy. You know what I mean?
So Gordon, you might be wondering why we in the pre entrance are talking about hockey. We actually were talking just about Canada. We're actually talking about the mounted police and how I've been in your life a little bit, making sure that you're in the boat for round 2 of the Richest Man in Town episode. And that might feel a little like stalking. And we just want to make sure you understand it's not stalking. It's really just the Mounties getting their man kind of thing. So
great song, great reference.
It was 3 degrees. It was like, and then we went Canada and then we went hockey. But like, it was actually, the pre was really about me confessing to Tyler for the first time ever I didn't play Turkey Bowl this Thanksgiving. And instead, I watched the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Okay. How was the wind with the floats or the balloons? I don't even know what they're called.
You know what? I'm going to claim this. Because here's the thing, Tyler. I actually got into the parade because I am a closet meteorologist as well. And so I was interested in the velocity of the wind and whether that would impact the floats. It was cool. It all worked out.
All right, so here's the thing though, like how long of a sit down is it to watch the Thanksgiving Day parade?
Oh yeah, it's a commitment, and it's morning, so it's not like you're popping popcorn, you're eating holiday breakfast casserole.
Because I feel like as a closet meteorologist, about 15 seconds of that parade, you've kind of got what you need, right? Or do you need to stick it out for the 6 hours of time to watch? What are these balloons? Are they like? I'm at a loss. I know what a float is. What's the balloon action that we got?
Oh yeah, The balloon takes floats and just like elevates it. It's
next level. Oh well, I like what you did there.
Well, and they're like 200 feet long, right? Like 200 feet long, like 75 feet tall. Like they're insane.
Yeah, we can't. This is lipstick on a pig, guys. We can't get past the fact that Mike Freeman did not play Turkey Bowl. I have shredded the man card, and I'm on my knees hoping for forgiveness, and maybe next year I'll redeem myself. So there.
Forgiveness is always available to you. So. Yeah.
Spiritually mature. That was very nice of you. I was going to say that Carl's Jr. is definitely backing out of sponsoring this episode because of what you just said. So that's disappointing.
Well, we're trying to pick up a sponsorship from our Canadian friends.
What are we doing? Like some teddy bear, some gift bear of the mounted policeman on his horse, like for Christmas. Like what are we doing here?
I think we're going with syrup because I know Tyler Gould loves himself some maple syrup.
I do not, as a matter of fact. But I feel like between the three of us, not one of us has a really good idea of what the Royal Mounted Police are all about.
Yeah, and we'll do that for homework.
Because all three of us have referenced a horse and
a red jacket.
I don't know if that's really how it all works, but I'm willing to go with it because that's all I know from some cartoon in the 70s.
It's not the 1800s. They actually have vehicles now, Gordon. They're not the Amish. So they did actually progress in their civilization. My bad, guys.
Hey, quick update. How did your boys basketball team, how did the tournament turn out?
Ooh, I won't bury the headline. They lost, but played really, really well. We knew this was the two teams that should have been in the championship, and Foothill's really tough. I shared some of that with you last night.
So they lost in the championship.
Yep. So, but they lost by 6, and they very easily could have lost by more. We were up going into half, like we had some, but then we kind of let our zone get a little loose, and they did what good teams do, and they hit open threes. And so it was real. I mean, yeah, well, shout out to them. They were awesome. They did exactly what winning teams do when you get an open door. And then, for us, dude, 3 games in, and especially for our son, like, yeah, just amped. Could not have been a better start to him coming back from injury. So no, it was cool. It was cool. So he, I may have said this in the first episode. I was glad you were stalking me, because if I'm being truthful, I'm probably forgot most of what I said in the first episode. So if I just repeat, let's just delete that we did a 2-part. We'll need to, sorry to make your editing work harder. Hey, we're not actually having this guy back again because he has dementia or something like that. But so he bathed his soul in Taco Bell. So so he's good now. He's good.
There you go.
So he's back. Now he's ready for non-league play starts Tuesday. So
the healing elixir of Taco Bell.
It's drowning your sorrows in mild sauce. Is that sort of the strategy?
It is, because
like
the lady probably gave him 15 packets of mild sauce, and he requested more. To which then she literally did 2 hands worth, and I was like, she knew what he needed. She was God's agent, man.
Yeah, I love that. And can I just digress for a second here? Like, when did it become a thing that Taco Bell asked you how many packets of sauce you needed? I mean, the good old days were they just threw in 50 and you did your thing, right? And you had a drawer at your house that was full of Taco Bell sauce.
Yep. You know what? I'm not an economist, but that's got to be a sign of a pending recession. Right?
You're right.
If we're counting down, it's like Subway napkins, and now Taco Bell's counting sauce packets, and you guys are like, Mike went to Subway. Like, who's gone to Subway this decade? I did give it another go.
I will say, every so often I'll see a Subway commercial during a football game, and I think to myself, man, that looks really good. and then that thought just vanishes, and I never end up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was wondering the other day. I literally deep thoughts on date night, right? Date night deep thought, sitting there across from Kelly, and I'm thinking, and she's like, "What are you thinking about?" And I said, "I wonder if that Jared guy from Subway got fat again."
I bet you he's jacked, right? He's in prison.
And that is when Kelly.
Does he have that prison physique going on?
I think.
And that was when Kelly reminded herself again to just stop asking what Mike Freeman's thinking.
She needs like a filter before what you're thinking comes to her. You know,
and
I
thought it was funny that Tyler said. I thought it was funny that Tyler said, "I digress," because digress means you are leaving a script in a direction that we were heading.
No, you wanted to talk more about Canada. So
I wanted to leave Canada and get on to fast food and the new rules of fast food. So,
and I do want to apologize to my friends at Jersey Mike's for even mentioning that I went to Subway, because that's just not right.
I love Jersey Mike's. So we have a mod coming right by us, another mod location.
True story.
And oh yeah, dude, down into Churn Creek, across from Costco by Save Mart, dude. So if I actually said that if I could get a Chipotle and a Jersey Mike's, I probably need a Carl's Jr. So that's a lie. I do have to go uptown for that, but dude, we're in heaven down here, bro. Like, whoever's planning the city, and these sweet people that are buying real estate and developing stuff, God bless them.
And somebody somewhere in Texas or in Tennessee right now is hearing about In-N-Out and dreaming about In-N-Out, and Reading, a population of less than 100,000, has two In-N-Outs.
True.
And they're both slammed.
What does that say? I don't know. I don't know. Like, if you're talking about economic forecasts, I mean, I know that Taco Bell is stingy with the sauce, but the In-N-Out by my house is like, the line is 2 miles long.
Totally.
Like, it's insane.
Yeah, and we're dropping $16 on a cookie at Crumble,
Oh,
so
my
there's
gosh, dude. Exactly.
I think we're doing just fine.
May I digress for a moment?
Please.
Are guests allowed to digress? Is that in the bylaws? Mike, I know it has been some time, and I know that the video doesn't air. At least that's what you told me. There is a change of location from where you were when we recorded part 1.
Oh,
now
yeah,
you're in an office. Before, you were like in a living room, like behind Movies 14, like behind Cinemark, like in a little dining room there. And now what happened?
And I'm actually home now. I think last time I was coming off of a work gig, and now this is back in the lab.
Okay, sure. I like it. The lab's awesome. Both of your labs are awesome.
It's funny because I have my memory Again, Gordon, you could repeat everything you said from last time. I think we'll do just fine. Like, I'm okay with that.
That is fascinating. Tell us more about that.
Yes, I don't remember Mike. Even I don't remember your background at all last time. That's crazy.
She actually
it's kind of like a
He
lady's.
can't see you.
It's kind of like a lady's makeup. You don't want to notice it.
For sure, right? And you're
Noticing
certainly not
it,
saying anything.
then something's wrong.
1,000%. 1,000%.
That's too funny.
Hey, I will say this. So it has been a little bit, right? November holidays, like there's a lot going on. And so we took a little break, but I can actually tell you I'm a better man with richest men in town in my life, Tyler Gould.
Yeah.
Those around me have probably observed a little hitch in the get along, a little like, what's going on? Where's Mike at 100%? And I think it's these conversations that kind of get me grounded.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the subjects that we've been kicking around for the last 10 or 15, but like the idea, right? The town is an asset for sure.
Yeah. And I think my wife has said to me, I don't know what you do on Thursday nights or what's going on, but maybe you should get back to that. You seem to be better when you're doing that. You know
subtle.
Just a little note on the napkin. Thanks, babe. Thank you.
So I don't know what's moving in you guys. Let me throw this out there. This is a quote that I come to from time to time. I've got kids that are impressionable. We've talked, Tyler, raising older children. It really comes down to all we have is influence. And I think that, our kids have good days and bad days and struggles. And this is a thought that I've shared with them recently. Men and women who turn their lives over to God will discover that He can make a lot more out of their lives than they can. He will deepen their joys, expand their vision, quicken their minds, strengthen their muscles, lift their spirits, multiply their blessings, increase their opportunities, comfort their souls, raise up friends, and pour out peace. I love the idea of turning life over to God. I know that I do remember this, Gordon. I remember you sharing with us a little bit about that faith journey. I remember the power of a good woman in your life, and I think that's definitely something that we want to explore more in this part too. But what does that mean to you guys? Like, what if somebody is struggling and trying to do it on their own? Because I can actually tell you recently that's been my circumstance. What does turn it over look like?
Am I going? Tyler, you were supposed to pick it up there, man.
Help me out.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where you were going with it. That all sounds amazing. If that's on a menu somewhere, I'll say yes to that. I'll have 2 heapings of all of that goodness. It is my deep immaturity with not having some delusion of control that keeps me from, just, okay, that ship will get where it's intended to go. But I do believe all that to be true. But then in action, man, it's very difficult for me because, it's just difficult to trust that that is true, even though there's a cognitive side of my brain that's like, man, I have deep conviction around this. But really, really tough to put into practice. It's kind of funny that I'm going down this way. Perhaps there's a reason for it. I said something to a family member of mine during the basketball game that certainly was unkind if I were objectively looking at it. And it wasn't that I was upset. I had stress around, a lot of things with my son's return. And, afterward had to go back and say, what I've been coaching others to do in our family, clearly I still have areas to grow in what I've been telling them to do. I did not follow my own advice. So not that you were going this direction, but man, the Lord's hand and leading and shepherding of our lives is everything and true and right and ordained by God. But man, I sure do a great job of getting in the way of that. So
Yeah, and I think that's actually some of my recent struggle. I find myself saying, like, in kind of reflective moments, I find myself saying, live the lesson, like live what you're telling other people what works. I'm not telling other people what to do, but a lot of it does come out of like, hey, in my experience, these are things that have helped me. And it's almost like, then try that.
Yep.
And I think that palms up. We had a guest that we had a guest several episodes back, but just talking about accepting what God has for us and in mind. And I think when as we come up on the holiday season, we think of George Bailey and just that fight. He fought and fought it and fought it. He didn't want the building alone. He didn't want marriage. And it's like, no, there was something else in the cards, right? Something else in the works. And if we can turn it over, maybe there's more.
Yeah.
Anything we could do.
I love that thought, that, Gordon, you talk about going back to someone and kind of, facing that and saying, hey, maybe I need to change some things there. And Mike, to your point of living the lesson, I mean, I've certainly been at points where I've thought, and I don't know if it's been an actual thought that I've had, but I've felt this way, like I've kind of got some things figured out. I've kind of got some things figured out. And I love the idea though of taking your own medicine, right? And being able to say, hey, this is, if I'm going to ask someone else to make some changes, I got to be willing to make some changes 100%. And especially, I think with, I have kids that are out of the house and they're kind of doing their thing, and they'll call and they want to have these conversations, and I've got some good answers ready to go, like I'm a quick draw artist, I can pull those things out pretty fast.
A real wise guy.
Yeah, right. But the reality is, if those things ring so hollow, if I'm not doing those things, and it doesn't only just ring hollow with my kids when I'm telling them those things, it rings hollow with me. If I'm not doing it, it rings hollow with me, and I feel that, and I hate that feeling. So I love that idea of like, hey, I'm in the, I'm giving this advice, or I've learned this lesson. But just because you've learned it once doesn't mean you don't continue to apply that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that it's like a constant, I mean, it's a constant reach for how do I, because I want to be in a position to be a quick draw artist on some good advice for my kids, right? But I want to be in the position that I can tell them that, hey, these are some things that you can try. And I'll tell you why you can try them, because I'm trying them right now and they're working, and I think there's definitely power in that. We all know people where it's do as I say, not as I do. Right. And I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy.
It's probably what makes you guys eligible to be the hosts of a podcast called The Richest Men in Town. It's willingness to learn, willingness to realize that you haven't arrived, but some stuff has been deposited in you. You are a repository of, wisdom, probably like myself, through a lot of poor experience or poor choices, or immaturity in situations. And then, being able to, I feel that heart as I hear both of you talk. We're a bit behind you guys in the sense that we still have some children at home, and but we have two out of the house, and I can't remember how it happened, but I'm reminded of a book that my wife and I stumbled upon. It's called Keep Your Mouth Shut and They'll Welcome Matt Out by Dr. Jim Burns. Did youth stuff forever, probably still 60 years, probably still going in Southern California, but he talks a ton about rewriting the job description. And so just as you're talking, that idea of, man, if I'm saying something to them, it is beneficial to them that they understand there's a common struggle, that they're not just looking at me, that I've figured it all out, that I'm, doing the same thing. And as much as I was preaching to my son, I told him, I said, here I caught myself in my own situation, think I was this, you know, psychological guru building this Mamba mindset in your mind, only for me to not, 5 minutes after the game be like, crap, like, way to be an idiot, way to be that guy that do what I say, not what I do guy. And so, but yeah, that side of it. And then the side of like, man, again, he talks about in that book about rewriting your job description and how frequently that happens in stages of your life. But that reminded me of that as you both talk about kids being out of the house and we do only have influence,
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think it's interesting, Gordon, that just, that idea of, you talk about learning the lessons, but I love, you're talking to your son and you're kind of, coaching him up. But I think the biggest lesson is, man, I screwed up and now I'm going to fix this. Right. It's just like the practical application of that is such a big deal, and we talk about this in our house, that we're quick to apologize, right? Because we understand that we're going to screw up. We're going to say things in a moment that we don't mean, or we're going to, say things that are taken the wrong way. And regardless of what that is, as a family unit, we're going to be committed to being quick to apologize, because, we're not going to sit in that and say we're right or you're wrong. It's just, hey, I'm sorry. How can we move forward? Right. And so I love that modeling that you're doing. So,
well, there's so much in, there's so much, I think I mentioned it last time, like that's just caught, you know what I mean? Like, I'm yapping at my kids all the time, but there is so much of, whether it's that what they catch, just in several ways, but, by modeling, you know what I mean? Here I am telling him to, trying to, obviously paying attention to the young men that are under my care, and trying to raise them to be men, actual men, not in the world currency of men. And, encouraging them to throw a flag on themselves, but who am I, if not a hypocrite, if I'm unwilling to do it on my own self, you know what I mean? That, and pretend that I didn't make a mistake. So, I love that. I love that. Quick to apologize. That's awesome.
I was hanging out with some kids and we were looking at some of the teachings in, First John in the New Testament, and like there's a piece in that it's pretty strong. I mean, there's a lot of it that's strong, right? But like he that says that he loves God and doesn't keep the commandments is a liar, right? And I threw that up there on the screen for the kids, and I was just like, "Raise your hand if you're a liar." And they're looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "My hand's first one up, right?
Yep.
First one up, like." Hey, this is the work, right? The older I get, the more I realize that some of these camps that the scriptures kind of point out, like I don't want to be in, but I'm in.
Yep.
The Old Testament and the harlot and the person that breaks the covenant, and it's like, that's me, right? It's like the older I get, the more I realize. I remember watching Top Gun as a kid, and Maverick was the hero, and Iceman was a jerk. And now I watch it, and it's like, man, Maverick's kind of a jerk, and Iceman's kind of cool. Right? You start to look at some things like, man, guilty as charged, right? I mean, and I think that's the climb, right? I mean, Tyler, we're talking about. Trying to make progress is just beating yesterday. And that beating yesterday is a refining, evolving, repenting, right? How do I need to change my thoughts? How do I need to change my actions so that I can be better? Not better than you, better than me. Yesterday. Right. And I think that's the good news of the gospel, right? I mean, that's the whole point. I was sharing with somebody at work the other day, like, hey, you need to understand one of the scripts I have in Mike Freeman's head is Charles Dickens' words, at the end of A Christmas Carol about Ebenezer Scrooge after Christmas, right? After that Christmas, he kept his word to Tiny Tim. He was a better man than, right? And he kept Christmas in his heart every day. Like that's the real sign of change for me. That for me, that's the real sign of like, that's a disciple of Jesus Christ. Right.
I love that. Yeah. And Mike, I always, we've had this conversation before about like removing debris, from our lives and trying to like, clear our paths and be on a better path. And, I think sometimes when I get down to it, like it's pride, right? And ego that are constantly thrown out in the path, and because if you can strip that away, you're quick to say, all right, I was wrong, or these are the things I recognize in myself that need to be adjusted, right? Because at the end of it, I really believe like that's the answer, right? Like there's been so many times in my life where I've been in a contentious moment, and I leave that moment and I'm like, that person was wrong, right? And that person did this, and that person said this, and it's all this list of that person. And the reality is, if I made some changes, I could go back and I could have resolved a lot of those moments, looking internally rather than looking externally as to what is everybody else doing that's causing this problem. You know what I mean? And that's, and look, I'm 49 years old, and it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I'm willing to actually do that, right? Because at 25, it was everybody's problem and not mine. So
I think I was 35.
Yeah, well, me too. But well, I don't know who said it, but somebody said this idea. There's the most dangerous situation is to feel like you're under the influence of personal revelation, and you're not. Right. But like, I think that the second most dangerous would be to think that you're humble and you're not, because that somehow, like, that to me is a sneaky monster that does creep into my life.
Yeah.
Where I will be feeling a sense of humility. I believe ego is the enemy, but there it is often in my way.
100%. It's the companion, man. You know what I mean? Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah.
And it's dang comfortable.
What makes you
right?
feel
And
good.
it's thrown down there because really the only thing you can change is you. And that's why it's thrown down as an obstacle. Right?
Yeah. And I think the conversation though, see, I love these conversations, because I think that when we're willing to say, let me look at myself and see what I can change, or we're willing to tell someone else that, hey, I'm in the middle of the struggle too. Like I'm working hard at getting some things changed, and it's not easy. I think that's when we can really help lift people, right? When we're in the process of trying to like work on ourselves, I think there's some synergy that occurs when someone says, hey, I need some help, we're like, shoot, let's do it together. And I think that's kind of parenting in a nutshell, I guess, right? Where, we're always trying to tell our kids what they should be doing. And the reality is I'm like, hey, don't do that. And then I'm like, crap, I'm doing that. Like, I need to stop doing that, So.
Yeah. And I think, in my life, I think that's the pursuit of maturity for me, is recognizing that sooner, because Mike, when you were talking about that verse earlier and how we often, again, if we're looking, if we're wanting to strive to be the richest men in town, we're seeing ourselves in the negative side of that, areas that still need to be developed and constructed and grown. When you were talking about that, I was thinking about 1 Corinthians 13. I've led a few things in my day. I could, just done a few things in my day. And man, can I lead people? Can I organize an event? Can I run a venue? Can I all of those things? But man, when that love goes on display for, when I'm tired or when I'm irritated or I'm, a little burnt out, that's that banging gong. You know what I mean? It's not, for me, It's not what I do in front of people, and I've done plenty, but I hold myself on the hook for, how then I came home and, was not kind, or was like, man, dude, you totally had that scripted different in your head. You said you were going right, and then you literally went in and went left. Like, what the heck, And that idea of, it's been pervaded all over the place. It's common to you guys, but that 1% better every day. And, something my wife and I picked up on early in our marriage through some counselor was, I just was trying to get to 51%, my own journey. I'm just trying to get to 50. If I can win 51% of the time, that's good, because that represents a few things. Not only does that represent, just a pursuit for myself, but also it represents that, my wife can begin to trust that there's a positive attachment coming, at least on the next one, but on the one after that, if I can develop a habit of that, if we're gonna, I don't know, other than perhaps two accountants that have married each other that are locking or, or, breaking down their marriage into percentages. But, and then I think about, I don't know if I mentioned this the first time, but, I'm also mindful of probably the greatest marriage advice I ever received. There's a guy named Paul David Tripp, and he said that the day your marriage will change for the better is the day you realize you're the biggest problem in your relationship. And I just thought, like, that's awesome. And also a giant, oh crap. So, try and, because you can do all the ego and humility and lay pride down and all that stuff. But man, when you take ownership of every issue and try to, go through that lens, that's some difficult work that, certainly my heart and mind and soul are not always wanting to do. You know what I mean? Because again, like I said, that immaturity is still there, trying to, well, it was there for, had they not done that, you wouldn't have, I'm 4 years old again at preschool. It's like, dude, come on, guy. So you're too old for this. You can't be in preschool anymore. You're too old. So
yeah. Well,
I think too, and those go together with that Corinthians 13, right? I mean, it so goes together. And Tyler, what you were saying when you're talking to your kids and you're not living it, it's tinkling brass, right? It's like it's not gonna resonate.
Yeah, yeah. And I just, I love the idea though, because I feel like where I'm at now in life, right? There was this expectation when I was younger that you'd get to a certain point and things would just be clear. Like, you know what I mean? Like you would just kind of have it figured out. And I feel like I'm on the face of the cliff, still climbing straight up, and part of that is terrifying because I'm like, dude, you're too old to be on the face of the cliff. Come on, get it together, right? The other part of that is like, I feel almost blessed to be on the face of the cliff too, because I feel like I'm in the work. Do you know what I mean? And like, and if I'm in the work and I'm willing to be in the work, I can feel progression, right? Like I can look back on timeline and say, man, at this point, I was not where I needed to be, right? And now where I am now, there's been a huge change. I see it. My wife will probably tell you she sees it some days, not every day, but she sees it, right? So so there's like that, I guess I've come to this understanding that you're not going to have clarity. You're just going to be in it and embrace it.
Yeah, I don't know if I shared this, but I was recently having a conversation, and honestly, this good sister must have been 80 years old, right? Maybe even older. Yeah. And we were just talking about the battle, right? The battle of virtue, the battle of chastity, and the world that we're living in. And she shared with me that it's still hard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hold on, whoa. Like I have this idea that like, there's seasons in life where some things are harder than others. You're talking to me in your season of life, and that is still a hard thing. And it's like, yeah, because that's the mountain face, right? Yeah, that's the face of the mountain. And the mountain that you do climb, cool, enjoy the view, turn around. There's 7 summits right behind you, waiting for you, right? Waiting for you to to take them on. I just want, and Tyler, one of the lessons that I've learned from you is just like every once in a while, it's good to look back on the graveyard of Goliaths that with God's help, you've slain, you know what I mean? Because that does give you, and maybe not Goliath, even like David found the confidence to take on Goliath with some of the victories that he had in much smaller venues, right? But that idea of, okay, I've done some things.
Yeah,
right?
I think
I've done some things.
Yeah.
There were some mile markers on this climb that were hard going through it, but it's like that. It does prepare you and it gives you the strength. And the thing is, like, the beauty is in the low place.
Yeah.
Like that is there's it's long. I don't need to read the whole thing, but I mean, it was a powerful thought that I've had since I've been hanging out Life Without Tyler Gould. But I'm just going to share this.
Dude. It's so peaceful.
Let me tell you. I'm going to share this, right? So this comes from an author named Heidi Priebe, and she says this: to love someone long term is to attend 1,000 funerals of the people they used to be, the people they're too exhausted to be any longer, the people they grew out of, the people they never ended up growing into. We so badly want the people we love to get their spark back when it burns out, to become speedily found when they're lost. But it is not our job to hold anyone accountable to the people they used to be. It is our job to travel with them between each version and to honor what emerges along the way. And I kind of, I dig, I mean, there's some depth there with like the people that they were supposed, like that stuff freaks me out, right? I know there's a Mike Freeman I'm supposed to become, and I can actually tell you how to be him. I just gotta commit to do it. You know?
Yeah.
I got to commit to do it. And it's not some crazy recipe, right? It's probably looks like Kraft mac and cheese kind of recipe. You know what I mean? I just, sometimes there's old debris. Sometimes there's ego. Sometimes there's pride. And it's like, I want to maybe do this thing my own way. And it's like, man, if you can just do this thing, here's how bad it is, guys. Here's how bad it is. I'm trying to be 4 things every day, right? I'm trying to be strong. I'm trying to be true. I'm trying to be compassionate, and I'm trying to be rich, not financially rich, this rich, right? I've come up with this tool where every day my calendar pings at 9:30 p.m. with questions around those 4 things to just tap into, like, hey, did you win today? For the last week, I've ignored that survey because I know I'm not winning, right? Like, Gordon, to your point, I'm probably 48, 49. And I have a reminder ping every night at 9:30, and I just, not tonight.
It's like not weighing yourself after Thanksgiving. You're like,
that's exactly it.
We'll check in 2 weeks, man.
That is the perfect analogy, right? I know life circumstances are such that I don't want to step on that scale right now.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not solving anything. Like, you're not getting skinnier.
It's so good.
But let me read a quote to you that I've
perfect analogy
that I've been thinking about lately, right? And I think it kind of relates to this and to a certain degree. It says, the greatest decision I ever made in my life was to give up something I dearly loved to the God I loved even more. He has never forgotten me for it. And I was thinking about that, like, this idea, because I think when I first read that quote, I thought about making sacrifice and service and, doing things for others and, whatever that might look like. But now, as we're talking, I'm like, man, some of that is just the willingness to get rid of the things that are holding me back from being the person, to realizing the potential that I have. And they may be things that are good, but they're not great. Right. Mm-hmm. And so how do I make those slight adjustments and sacrifice some of those things that I love for a God that I love even more, And I mean, shoot, reading that, it sounds beautiful. Doing that, it's hard. it's hard.
That is not the truth.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. So, easy to say, to say, hard to do, hard to put into practice.
Yeah, that idea of just of sacrifice in general, right, is tough. And it's interesting because that's another conversation I have with my kids a lot about the importance of sacrifice, the importance of giving of yourself and of doing for others. But man, the practice of that is difficult. And I think I need to be better about conveying the difficulty of it to my children as well, like acknowledging that difficulty. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes I think I express those thoughts in more of a lecture as opposed to let me tell you, like, I get it, because the other day someone called me, needed something, and my first thought was like, oh, dude, I just got home. You know what I mean? As opposed to let me get after it. You know what I mean?
I would be such a better dad if I just said I get it more.
Amen. 100%. Yeah.
I want to spit something. I want to solve the problem. I want to wipe the tears. Sitting with a kid and just saying, man, I get that.
You know what, Mike? I was having a conversation with someone several months ago, and they were going through a real hard time. And even to the point of like, maybe it's better if I'm not alive, right? If I was just dead, if I could just end it all. And
122 people every day.
Yeah. And they said to me, I just want to be away from everyone. I want to leave. I want to be out of here. And I was sitting there listening to this, and I said, you know what? Me too. Sometimes me too. And I said, so let's do this. We're going to check in with each other every night, just a text. And let's not leave where we are today. Let's just be together in this struggle together. Right. And I think that, like, I probably pulled out some scriptures or a great quote but man, I don't think that was it. I mean, I think that, like, let's just lock arms and walk through this mud together, and let's see where we end up, as opposed to calling it quits.
I picture a sweatshirt. I picture Tyler Gould when it gets into the storm of the century in Chula Vista when it hits 65 degrees.
It's freezing cold right now, man. It's like 60. It's crazy.
you put on a sweatshirt that just says, I get it. Right? Or it's like, you know what? Me too. Like, that's it.
That's it.
Like, that's it. Cause as you were talking earlier, I thought of that scene in C.S. Lewis' Great Divorce with the lizard on the shoulder. I don't know if you guys have read that book, but oh my goodness, that is a powerful, powerful book. It's a fictitious trip through heaven and showing progress of people trying to be better. And this guy's got a lizard on his shoulder, and I think it's symbolic of lust maybe, but it's any sin. And it's just chirping in his ear. And an angel comes, is like, hey, you want me to get that? You want me to kill that? You want me to crush that? You want me to remove that? And the guy's like, yeah, this thing is like driving me crazy. And it just gets louder. Don't do this. And there's this internal battle, right? And the angel finally is like, with the agency of the person's like, just please help me, removes it. And boom, the guy turns into like some amazing unicorn, right? And flies off, like just becomes something so much better. And like, ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
And in that lizard on our shoulder, one of the scripts that they are playing loud is that you're in this alone.
Absolutely. Which is right. It's the antithesis of what the gospel message is, which, right. The two messages are you're alone, totally alone, and no one will ever understand you.
No one understands.
Right. And the other side of that is you're never alone, and God totally understands you. Right.
And I would add a third, right? On that you're alone, and everybody else is above you and better than you.
100%. Yeah.
100%. Right. You're alone. Everybody else is better and higher than you, and no one understands what you're going through.
Well, and here's the problem. Like, we talk about this a lot. Like, life is a bit of a red carpet affair, right? We got to put on our best, put on your best face, your best clothes, whatever it is, and you go out there and you look like $1 million. and you're all marching down looking like $1,000,000, but we're all hurting, crying, struggling, right? But we're
Yep.
unable to admit that to each other. And that's devastating, right? I mean, because then you're automatically looking around going, crap, I'm faking it, but everyone else has got it together. That's tough.
We have, it's, yeah, I'm gonna say two things in my group of three right here. Two of which probably you both are gonna deflect or not know what to do with. But we have this great picture in front of us with social media that perfectly describes what we're talking about. That, whether it's acts of service or sacrifice, or whether it's the way that we conduct our lives with our kids or with our wives or in our job, that is this, fantastically composed picture that everyone looks at and is like, oh man, that's rad. Like, that's awesome. How did you, but they're not seeing that. It's the, for my family, it's the age old, hey, we're going to do a family photo. And everyone wants to kill each other beforehand, during, and then after we're like, yeah, I acted like an idiot. I'm really sorry. Yeah, I'm glad. And then you get the picture and you're like, oh man, I'm so glad we did that. But it's like, geez, guys, we almost lost limbs at each other's hands getting there. And I would say again, these are the here's your opportunity to pull out your deflection mechanisms. I think it, whatever your listenership is, or connection with your guests, is that your guys' willingness to be honest, or, some would say vulnerable, about what that struggle is. As you've both been talking, I've thought about Theodore Roosevelt's, it's probably from a speech, not a historian, not a teacher, relax people, man in the arena.
That's
what I mean?
Wall.
That, yeah, they like, man, you guys doing that, like, this is it, man. Like, this is the thing. I think about that younger me that was just asking, like, what is it? How do I fix this? What do we, just relentlessly, tirelessly chasing this bullseye, that I wasn't smart enough, nor did I have a person in my life to slow down and understand that I actually was on the path and the pursuit, and that God was leading me toward his purposes and maturity and growth and Christ likeness and all those things. So much of that is it. So, as an outsider, and, people are going to think now that you paid me to be on because I'm giving props to the host, but man, that I found that to be true in my life as I've served families affected, my wife and I have served families affected by disability or chronic medical illness. That willingness to say the thing that everybody's thinking, when they're trying to understand how you feel about a certain thing, opening that window and letting them see that through your words, is a game changer, man. Is a game changer. So anyway, kudos to you guys. And on the heels of saying that really neat thing, I'm going to demonstrate my age and my, two-time COVID survivor brain. I forgot the third one, but it will come back at some point. So
yeah. Well, can we talk a little bit about the it's almost like Gordon, I can't really think of the right word. It's almost like an imposed ministry, right? Where you guys, given the journey that your wife's name is Lynn Ann, right?
Yes, sir.
So given the journey that you guys have been through, puts you in some really rare company to be of service and to help others going through. I have a person right now. I have a friend right now that is literally describing her load as the unimaginable. Right. And I don't have words. I can't do the me too. I can't sit down with my friend and say, yeah. Right. but you guys can. And can you talk a little bit about how that evolved, or what lessons are coming from that? I mean, I don't want to get too tender into other people's situations and other people's lives, but I find that fascinating that sometimes we're given this heavy load, and it just so happens to shape us and prepare us to be of service to other people with their loads.
Yeah, that's very kind of you to ask. I would say that Lenan and I have a belief that our purpose on earth is to accomplish God's purposes. And now I'm remembering that at this moment. Talk to me tomorrow and then be like, no, like, forget that. Like, I'm trying to control everything and do things the way I want, guys. But I sounded good on a podcast. Aren't I awesome? I'm going to get like one of those, like my kid made the honor roll. I'm going to get like, I got interviewed for a podcast and put that sticker on my car so people can be jealous.
If we were good, we'd send you a swag bag, but we don't have
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I just chose the cash option. So I appreciate you guys being willing to let me negotiate that.
We'll get you a 1099. You're coming
yeah.
Yep. Make sure you claim that.
So good. Dude, that was money. Well done. So I would say that we stumbled into this. God has asked us to carry some things that are pretty unique. It has been a grand struggle of mine at specific periods in my life to know that we're on a path that's different than pretty much everyone else. And I'm a pretty visual guy. And so in my mind, we're on this path, but I can also see the other path. And that's made me be very, at times, be very critical and get resentful and bitter toward other people. Just because we do understand the language of loss and pain and suffering. But
acquainted with grief.
Oh my gosh, 1,000%. Before I forget this verse, let me just, as an overarching thing, and this would be a now, it's kind of like if you went to a business that started in a garage and now, they have this 200,000 square foot building. I would say this now, but it was true then. There's a verse, 2 Corinthians, I think it's 2 Corinthians 1:4, but it talks about comforting others with the comfort that God's given you. And that's a paraphrase. And, people are judging me. Feel free to just go to the Common English Bible or the New English Translation, whatever the current thing is that will most match my paraphrase.
Well, I would read the Gordon DeWitt translation of the New Testament.
Amen.
Is that clear?
I'm going to read it. I'm trying to work on my James Earl Jones or whatever.
You've got a voice.
Was, so.
You've got a remarkable voice.
So now back to actually answering the question. God just put us in positions with other people who were suffering. I can't tell you how many friends or acquaintances we've come across that my wife met because she was in the hospital with our son and they were in on the other side of the curtain with their kid, or she was in the ER and she just reached out, and just she took that thing and spoke to him. Two that I'm thinking of specifically, that have now been friends. Our son is 21 and, theirs is a few years older. So God has put us in unique positions. I think my previous career in church ministry afforded me the opportunity to get invited into some sacred moments with families and people, from the most tragic to, death just intersecting, their family's life, which is just, no one wants to go through that. No one wants to be in the club of losing a child or losing a spouse or whatever it may be. But pretty early on, just because of how God made my wife, so I'm the person that would I'm the personality that things could be going off um, pure chaos, and I can go to sleep and sleep through the night, no problem. My wife is the person that, something comes into our lives, some new diagnosis with our son. She'll have read a 400-page book about it by the time I wake up in the morning. And I'm just like, who are you? Like, it's like she's a robot, you know what I mean? But I mean, in the best sense, like how she just has those skills. But so she kind of made herself an expert around insurance, IEPs, Medi-Cal, SSI, stuff that families like ours typically intersect. Far Northern Regional Center. Can't say enough about their fantastic organization, Raw Family Empowerment. Realize those have no context now that they've already left my mouth. For your
We will
listeners
drop
who
them.
are
We'll
not
drop
in
them in
Northern
the show
California.
notes. We'll drop them in the show notes so people can become familiar with that work.
Okay, good. But, and then people would just reach out to her. Hey, we're struggling trying to get, services that our kid needs for X, Y, or Z, or, insurance is saying they're not going to X, Y, or Z. And my wife is just, she would have made a brilliant, lawyer and subject matter expert on these things. And so, and then, as we just lived our lives, to know our son, our oldest son, I think I said the last time, the way that God makes these humans, is just unreal. So as I talked the last time about, being born with cerebral palsy, typically if you're born with cerebral palsy, you have a seizure disorder as well, but then that'll stop somewhere around the age of 2, and then somewhere between 8 years old and 10 years old it will return, and it returns in varying forms. The way his returned was in sleep-induced epilepsy, which is just a crazy God story in itself, which I can tell if you desire. So then in 2016, him almost dying and finding out that he has a incredibly rare case of Crohn's disease. That was in 2016. And I can remember days of my life where I'm just begging God to give it to me. Like, let me take it. Like, I cannot believe you're going to ask my son to carry another thing when he's already carrying these other things. All he wants in his life to be normal, not be an outsider, not be marginalized. He just wants to be a buddy with his friends. And then there's significant barriers to that. God was very kind to me, to bring to my mind that, if I were to take it, and I may have said this last time, so forgive the repeat if it is, but, I would have been a pretty cynical, bitter, angry person if I was carrying what he was carrying. And I just was reminded of the unique, incredible way in which God makes these kids and these young adults and adults, who, typically society doesn't think about, and they don't have to. We went to Disneyland for Tuesday over Thanksgiving break. And, they have some great services for families like ours. But at the same time, I'm like, man, there's people they're just going about their life. They don't realize that they're, banging into his wheelchair. He is able to walk in, small segments. And so, holding on to him so people don't knock him over, so that, people just don't think about it. And so, have no idea where I was going with that. So for your listeners that are perhaps in an old folks home, they're going to feel very close and connected to me right now. But anyway, that's so sorry. I remember going back. So, Tanner being in school, being in school here where we live, such a unique kid, just people love him and he loves them. And so, then, they know somebody who's hurting. They know somebody who's lost a child. They know somebody whose marriage is suffering because, the marriage is the last thing that's getting attention when you're in crisis, particularly with disability or chronic medical issues. And so that just kind of snowballed. And And we had been doing that. And then COVID comes, and there's not really anybody doing anything for families like mine. So, and I don't want to get, I'm the gray man. So I'm not going left, right, politics, this view of COVID, that view of COVID. If you're that person, I don't think you and I can be friends, because I'm not, nor will I be, espousing your viewpoint.
We are a
But
great program.
my family, they legitimately quarantined for 10 months, and I say that because we had friends who said that they quarantined, and then you'd see them out, see a picture of them out wherever. We thought there was significant risk to Tanner at the time. Would we do things differently now? Probably. But knowing what we knew then, our main goal was to keep him safe and protect his life. He has a compromised immune system just with treatments that he's on for his Crohn's disease. And so my wife just basically is like, what if we just did this ourselves? What if we just serve families? So that looked like us hosting a thing that we called Sip and Chat. We kind of created our own little organization, if you will, unofficially. Just because everybody was leaving families like ours behind. And so we would go buy drinks on our own dime. We'd deliver them to their houses, and then we'd do Zoom. And Zoom was our friend. And every Monday, we'd hang out with kids. Now, we did have one caveat, because we watched this 4 times in our own family. And that 4 times was watching and I think rightly so. I think, there's people out there who would argue that, this is whatever, but, I have strong opinions about it. But watching the siblings of their brother, be like, wow, somebody just showed up with an Xbox for Tanner. Like, okay, I'm excited, but I'm also like, okay, how do I feel about this? So what we specifically did with those Sip and Chats was, it was just for the siblings. So it wasn't for the, child. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of organizations out there for them. Our son was a Wish kid. He's gotten some incredible opportunities. Tanner is a Wish kid. And he's had some incredible opportunities, but I've also watched their siblings be like, just being honest, which I appreciate. Well, it would have been nice if they could have just, even if they gave me $20, I mean, they're just trying to process like, okay, all my parents' attention is on my brother or sister. What do I get?
And they're living it with them, right? They're going through the same experience, right?
They are the ones sacrificing. In 2016, when my wife and I are in the hospital for 3 months with Tanner, pretty sure that we're not bringing him home. It was friends of ours that stepped in to parent our kids, and man, I can never repay him. I can't ever repay him. Thinking about my oldest daughter and missing her senior volleyball season, and some dear friends of ours who actually also serve a marginalized community with a ministry, stepping in our stead. I mean, I can never repay that. So they're paying the price too. Those siblings are paying the price. So that's just what we chose to do. And we ended up doing that for 2 years on our own dime. Just as, hey, that somewhat of what you described earlier, Tyler. Hey, we haven't forgot about you, while everybody's going back to life. And again, I'm not talking about wearing masks, taking shots. I'm not talking about any of that. Go live your life. Like, do whatever you want to do.
It was a thing
just for our family, So we wanted to be people that, we just didn't want to forget friends, people we hadn't, really become close with yet, that we hadn't forgotten their families while they were still trying to figure out how to protect their loved one. And so, but what a phenomenal time for us, as a group, and just even, my own kids, our own kids, they have such compassion and empathy for people, especially people that look different than other people or act different. One of our sons, I may have shared last time that we were very fortunate to be able to start a disability ministry at our current church. And our son, who's a mid teenager, he serves a couple times a month as a buddy. And one of the families that he serves them, they had never been able to go to church in 5 years. They'd never been able to go to church. And we know what that is. We know what that is, all that it takes to just get in the car, one, to make a decision you're going to go, get in the car, get there, and then to be told we have nothing for you. And then you just go home. Or you have another thing that happens where one spouse goes and the other stays home, and they alternate, or, whatever it is, just because that's the needs that they have. And the Lord had really laid a passion in my wife's heart around Mark 2:4, the story where they're ripping the roof open, lowering a dude in, and we're just like, we just decided we're going to be all about, because of our experience, not because we know anything. We just know what it is to hurt and feel alone and feel like nobody knows what you're going through and nobody cares, that we're going to give our lives to bringing those that are on the outside in. That aren't able to do that, through conventional means. And so, we've been very fortunate to walk with some people and, share, what I was praising you two for earlier, that, man, I have no idea. I'll never forget. I can think of two distinct things of feeling so alone and isolated and no one understood. Two things that my brother-in-law said. One was, we're having a particularly difficult time in our marriage, early on in our marriage. And he said, I can remember him saying that, man, marriage is really hard. And it was just hearing that somebody else said how I felt, man, that like unlocked a whole galaxy to me. Yeah. Like, okay, this is going to work, anyway. And then there was another time.
We're not weird, right? We're not
weird. Yeah. Exactly. Because, man, boy, does our enemy not try to, speaking of basketball earlier, trap you into a corner and make you think, cut you off from everyone else and make you think that that's true. And the other thing that he said was their son has had some health issues over his life. And I can remember him saying that, this idea that God is our father is a load of crap. And I'm just like, okay, I think I know where you're going with this. And he's like, because I'd never do this to my kids. And to have a pastor, a senior pastor of a church, say that, and while he, like I said about myself earlier, you have deep conviction that that's not true. Like, that's not even an appropriate view of God. But to be able to say those words, because one, that's what the world's wondering. And two, to be able to have that level of vulnerability that, man, I have this deep conviction that, I hope I would die around, which is my faith in Christ and believing that he is who he says he is in the Bible. But on the other hand, just being human and that pain of watching your kid and being like, man, I would never do this to my kid. I can't tell you how many times my brother-in-law and I have talked about, like, dude, if God made me a healer, man, I know where I'd start. I'd get to every children's hospital that I could, around the world. And that's just that, I think part of it is just how God made us, wanting to alleviate suffering, but also, wanting to, use power for good, and, to make such a dynamic difference in families' lives. But at the same time, I've also realized that the Lord has outfitted myself and my wife and our kids' souls with equipment that, when people ask, hey, how did you get that? Or how'd you learn to do that? You don't actually want to know, because you don't want to go through what it took to earn that badge, or, so, but God has been very faithful to us, man. He's held us up and he's stepped into gaps. And again, the fact that people would invite my wife and my family and myself into some sacred moments of their lives, of their crisis, man, it's certainly an honor, because I know what that feels like. So, and I've been very fortunate to have others, step into my life at times when, it's filled out of control and I need someone to fireman drag me, across the proverbial finish line, if you will, or the figurative finish line.
I just think I find that, first of all, I love what you guys done and how you're looking out for your community, and I think it's interesting, Gordon, that you said it, there's those that may admire you for certain things, right? Like, oh, how do you do this? And the idea of, you don't want to know where we learned this, right? Like what we had to go through to get the skill. But I think that's a great perspective, right? Because I think there's two ways we can go down that road, right? We can be totally separated from anything that we think is good when we're in the midst of hardship, suffering, crisis, right? And I think that if we're being honest, we're probably all in that mode at some point, right? Like you said, there's some bitterness and some anger and all this that comes with it. But getting on the other side of that and being able to say, okay, here's some real positive developments, emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever that may look like. But I think a lot of people don't understand that. They look at Gordon and your family and say, man, look at these guys. Right. It's like the red carpet affair, right? It's like, look at these guys. They've got it.
Totally.
But they don't realize that to get to the red carpet, it was a lot of dark alleys and late nights,
Yeah.
So I love that perspective though. And I wish that I'm so grateful for your honesty and your vulnerability there, because I think that's just as individuals, we need to hear that, right? That we're all kind of trying to get through some stuff, whatever that looks like for you, right? It may be totally different, but that acknowledgement of it's hard, man. It's hard, and we need to be looking out for each other. And I love that you kind of created this sort of organic community of people that you're ministering to. I mean, that's just to me, that's what this is all about. That's what this life's all about, right? Like, they're just trying to lift as many people as we can. So I applaud that. It's fantastic, man.
Tyler, it makes me think of like going back to our friend Dan Funk. Like that's like maybe episode back in 2020, but he was going through a divorce and he was watching people walking by on their way to, in happy couples, arm in arm on their way to potlucks with friends. And, in church, he'd be like, oh, sorry, you're going through a hard time. We're thinking about you. We're praying for you. Let us know if there's anything you can do. Like, freaking do something. Right. Like, I love that your wife came. I imagine how that conversation would go in the Freeman home. It'd probably be something like, she comes to me with this amazing idea and I'm like, duh. Yeah. Like, of course.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's the thing that we need. That's the thing that we need to be doing. Right. And so many times we don't, like, I remember Dan's in that conversation praying, and don't pray for me. Like, come give me a hug.
Yeah.
Like,
there is so much of that. There is so much of that. Sorry to cut you off, Mike. There is so much of that. Just, we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But like you described, Mike, with that person that, you met with or talking to, helping, it's very simply boiled down, and it's the ministry of presence. You know what I mean?
100%.
And so often we are, I want to say the word built, but that's probably not it. Our default is to see something hard and walk the other direction, or see something unfamiliar or scary, or I don't know what to do with that. I don't have any context for that. I'm going to go the other way. And this really just is about walking toward the thing, whether that's fire, whether that's, whatever it is, toward the pain. Man, I can feel, I do not know the person that you mentioned, your guest, previous guest, but man, I can feel that of like, man, it'd be nice if somebody just didn't treat me like now I'm, a second class citizen, or I'm not in the club anymore, or like, man, well, is he not saved anymore because he's divorced? Like, I'm not sure what the Bible says about that.
All of that.
And just be like, dude, you want to go play golf? You want to go, I don't know what you do. You want to go eat? Because everybody needs to eat. It's like, if I ever wrote a book, and I'm like, again, as I think I said in our last one, if you need like a 400 word count ebook, like, I'm your guy. Like, I feel like I can crush those all day long. Like, if we're just going free digital releases, like, I'm just so your guy. But I love being pragmatic. And so whether it's being pragmatic about what it is to step into a really hard thing, well, you know what? Everybody needs to eat. Everybody needs to keep drinking, and people need sleep at some point. That's a great place that people can step into when they have someone around them who's hurting. And yeah, whatever, they may be gluten intolerant, but you know what? They're going to care that you showed up with Olive Garden and dropped it at their door. They're not going to care that, well, what a jerk. That guy didn't know that I'm vegan and gluten intolerant. What an idiot. There's a great story of a pastor who was influential in my life, of them going to someone's home, and I think their daughter had just died, and he's, talking with the family, spends time with the family. A couple hours later, he's like, where's my wife? Like, it's time to go. She's in their bedroom folding their laundry. She just walked in and just started doing laundry. Like, and that's just what she was doing, because she wanted them to have washed all the bedding, put the bedding back on the beds, was folding towels, didn't need anything, just there to serve. And so I think the reality is that, if I were to do a small course on, to help other people, I can't, like, we're working with a family right now, and I can't carry their grief. I wish I could. These people are so close to us that we're like, there were many nights after, this passing, that I would just lay in bed sick, like physically sick to my stomach, because we were close to them. We were close to this person, very close to their family. And as much as I wish that I could take some of their grief, because I see that the weight of what they're experiencing is having a physical effect on me because of the closeness of our bond. But what I can do is I can go to Costco and buy a bunch of packaged stuff and drop it off at their door. So when the parents don't have the energy to fix anything, their kids can go get a bag of Cheez-Its or a bag of goldfish, or bring them bottles of water, or, toilet paper and paper towels. Those are just common things. Those are burdens that I can carry as an outsider, that may be helpful to them. And then hopefully they get to a point down the road where then they can ask if there's something, more surgical that needs to happen. So
the ministry of presence, I love that.
Yeah,
I love
awesome.
that. And the idea too is you running to, right? I liken it to that building, that building that's on fire, right? And
1,000%.
what our brave firefighters do by instinct. How great would it be if we had that instinct? Is like, I just need to get close to that people, to those people right now. And if we did it with the right intent, not like for the Instagram, right? But like doing
1,000%.
Be there with that, with one of those Costco pot pies, right? Those things will last freaking month.
Yep.
Some of those peanut butter pretzels, like,
Yep.
I digress.
You
have to have a
1,000%
plan. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take much. But can we talk a little bit? I've heard a couple of times this sentiment from you, this idea of, man, give it to me, or I would take it, right? I mean, we know being dads, moms, 100 times more powerful, but like, our kids are really just our hearts outside of our body.
Boy.
Right? Our hearts.
I actually heard that like a month ago, and that stopped me in my tracks, because I was trying to articulate what I was feeling about a certain situation with a very close friend of mine. who were both parenting teenagers. And man, he actually said that to me, and that stopped me in my tracks, because it was like hearing the language or the words to what I had been trying to say, or express.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I'm even with you as a dad sitting in the stands today, watching your boy play basketball, knowing of the recovery, right?
Yes.
And of the work. And I don't want to make light of comparing what your kids are going through, because it sounds like obviously
Sure.
Tanner's going through some things, right? But like we feel this, right? And we want this so bad. Like I remember my boy struggling for playing time, and when he got in, it's like, can we just have some success? You know what I mean?
Please don't screw up. Please
have some success. And I guess where I'm going with this is, even like when we raise a fist and we're angry, like that conversation, like that vulnerable conversation you had, right? It's like, man, this is BS, right? Like this is just not. I kind of feel like Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ would kind of be right there saying, "Me too."
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Right there saying,
yeah.
I get that.
I wholeheartedly believe. Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe. I tell people this, so hopefully it's true. We'll find out here at some point. The apostles thought that the end was near. So they're not. They
all
were
relative.
It turns out. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, whose space-time continuum are we using? Yeah, exactly. Right. Good point, Tyler. Well done. Shut up, Bible man. Yeah, jeez. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think back to what you were saying earlier about just saying, I get it. And I think that what you were just saying, Mike, the times I've said something to my kids and they're like, but it's hard. And I've just driven over that statement with a tank. When I should have said, dude, you want me to show you hard?
You know what's hard? A mortgage is hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, working 4 jobs is hard, bro. But man, that trying to make that shift to just sit with them, because what I say to these families or to others is that God is big enough to take however you feel. Like, just because you are angry with him, just because you're disillusioned, doesn't change anything. I was a pastor working at a church, and I did not pray for 8 months during that 2016 period. I was so mad at God. And again, whatever Bible scholars listening or, psychiatrists break it down, whether that's disillusionment or whatever. But I was so angry and disappointed with God that here he was again, collecting a new thing that he never asked to carry. And so sharing that with families, that, man, like, how you feel, God knows exactly how you feel. And as you said so perfectly, he's right there. I think we expect him to move or leave or be like, ooh, okay. Like when you're done,
get the lightning ready. He just cursed God.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Inside Out. I love that movie. Sorry, it's a Disney movie. I know that's probably not politically correct right now with some folks, but on Inside Out, when they've got this emotional control panel, that God's got his own control panel of just like, lightning,
piano,
bad things, take his favor away, piano. Yeah, exactly. And just how true it is that, what he says about himself in the Bible is 1,000,000,000% true. It will be true every day, every moment, every second, forever, regardless of how we feel. And that he's big enough and strong enough and loves us enough that bond that he has with us through Christ is still held together, regardless of how we feel, is something that I'm not even sure my human mind can quite comprehend. Because I felt some really wild ways toward him.
Yeah, I feel like that needs to be amplified so much, because our human minds, we can't, it's hard to square that, right? Like,
1,000%.
there's a separation all the time. And I just love that thought that, God's big enough to take however we feel. Right. I think that, and I think that the important thing too is just the validation of those feelings. Right. I mean, just to say like, hey, I get it. And not only do I get it, but it's okay to feel that way. Right. I mean, it's okay. You got to work that out, and I remember my daughter was going through a tough breakup, and it was very emotional, and my thing, like for me, I'm like, I'm a pull yourself up by the bootstraps, buck up, rub dirt in it, and we move forward. Right. But I had to get to this place where it's like, let's feel it, and it's okay to let's just be in that and let it kind of envelop us. And then we can think about what happens next.
Yeah. I think of it. If you took everything, if you took all the word of God that we have in the scriptures and you threw it into Chat GPT and you asked, what is God? I think that verse in the New Testament, I'm not a scriptorian, but somewhere in there recently, I did read that idea that God is love.
Yep.
And I think that love being big enough, you can hurl whatever, you can hurl the insults, you can hurl the anger, you can hurl and he's just like, yeah, okay, I'm here, right? Still here. And I over the break, I read the Four Winds. I finished the Four Winds by Kristen Hannon. Powerful story about just Dust Bowl, right? Like literally families in Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and the world is against them and they can't get a break. And then they come over here in California and they're second class and they're in the fields and they're right, prejudice, all of the things. Well, there's this story of a mother-daughter going through all of this, and the daughter's had enough and can't handle the mom, and she runs away. In all of these dire circumstances, the daughter is gone from the house when the mom wakes up, and the mom can't fathom the idea of life without the daughter and knowing where she is. And the daughter quickly learns that life is savage. The world doesn't care. And in a day, she's back, right? In a night, she comes back, and she's so grateful that the camp is still there. But I just want to read to you, like, this is mom being reunited with the daughter who ran away and came back. Mom drew back, her eyes were bright, and she was smiling. You are of me in a way that can never be broken, not by words or anger or actions or time. I love you. I will always love you. You taught me love. You first in the whole world, and my love for you will outlive me. When I read that, it was literally like, okay, stop. Take your phone and just take a picture of that, because those are just imperfect people, right? That's just a mother and a daughter who have flaws and weaknesses. But when I read that, it was like you are of me, nothing. As a dad, I hope I convey that to my kids, right? As a husband, I hope I convey that to my I hope I convey that to my wife, right? I mean, at work the other day, we had a one-word closure. One word, go whip around the room, give me a word of how you feel. And one of our secretaries had just gotten engaged, so she enthusiastically raises her hand up and says, engaged, to kind of show off the ring to everybody, right? And I jokingly said, I wonder if there will ever come a time when my wife of 25 years would raise her hand enthusiastically declaring married. To Mike Freeman, right? But this idea, like love, and like nothing you can do, nothing you can say, like it will outlive me, is powerful. And that's among mortals.
Son story right there, right?
Yes.
I mean,
that's the prodigal son. Right? And actually, as you were talking about, you're talking about the siblings. The prodigal son came to my mind, right? Yeah. All the attention on the fire that needs to be put out, and they're like, where am I at in this?
All I've done is done the right thing. That's it.
Yeah.
Where's mine?
Where's mine? That's it. And I just love that idea, because I think that, Mike, you said, the scriptures teach us that God is love, but I think sometimes we're in the middle of it, the thought process is God is vengeance, right? And that's kind of where that connection goes to, right? Like, why me? Why do I have to suffer? What have I done to deserve this? But I think that back to your point, Gordon, to letting people feel that and be okay with that, and understand that that's not going to, that thought that you're having today is not going to destroy the relationship that you have with a loving God ultimately, right?
1,000%.
Don't feed it. Don't feed it. Don't
Yeah,
feed that
totally.
thought.
100%.
Totally.
You can express
Yeah,
it, you can deal, but yeah.
Yeah, as I said earlier, being a visual person, I think about myself, I'm with God sitting on this stump, if you will. We live near some forest. And I get angry or disillusioned or disappointed, and I walk away, thinking that I'm creating some distance, and that he's going to leave because I'm not there. And then however long I take to get back, that's the patience of God. He's still sitting there waiting for me
On the stump.
when I get back on the stump, ready to I'm sorry too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry too, that this idea of suffering and loss and pain and hurt isn't lost on God, that he's up there thinking that, man, I can't believe, man, I built him such a cool place. Like, what's the problem here? Like, why is these guys they are dumb, Jesus was right. The Holy Spirit was right. Man, I can totally feel as I was talking. So where I live, our city is split by a river, and so there's several bridges that you can cross to go from the west side to the east side. The river flows from north to south, and I could feel as you were reading those words, Mike, that one, those are emotional words to hear, and I can feel how much I enjoy being in those mindful moments with God, reflecting on who he is and how he is toward me. That cognitive side, of realization that we were talking about earlier. I could feel myself crossing that bridge to that place. But then also, as we started this conversation, I like to also go to the other side of the bridge and be like, hey, dude, let me tell you some cool stuff. I'm not going to live it. And, God is up there and he's cool. But man, when he acts this way or he doesn't step in here, like, I'm going to get super upset. So anyway, but I was just going to point out that, man, I really enjoy that.
I think in our first round together, you talked about dynamic God moments, right? And I think that's those are the dynamics.
1,000%. Great point. Yeah.
And I think
absolutely.
And the idea too, like, I think the person I'm trying to become or build is like minimize the fluctuation.
Oh,
like
gosh.
minimize
great words.
minimize the wavelength and the variance between like, watch out, Mike's having a bad day. Like it would be kind of cool to be like, bad days are gonna come. But decades are pretty awesome. Zoom out a little bit and he's there on the stump, right? Yeah. And he's probably going to say, what have you learned, right? Talk to me.
And I think that for me, I think that at 47 years old, and I wasn't joking when I said 35 years old, I could tell you guys some stories. The Lord allowed some things to intersect my life at 35 years old that completely changed the trajectory. I, as I said in the first episode, I don't think I'd be here had, God not caused some events to happen, when I was 35 years old. But I think what I've realized as a 47-year-old, and, I will never say that this qualifies me to be the richest man in town. I just know what's been most meaningful to me in my life. And that's people just being willing to be vulnerable and share the things that are really scary and hard if you just think about them subjectively. But when you think about how my experience might help others, and I'm not talking about the red carpet style Yeah, man, I have such strong opinions about that stuff. I'm gonna
I've actually
not say
never,
those things.
just so you know, I've never looked like $1,000,000, even like the.
Well, I just think that even, people tell stories, but they're not really being vulnerable. I mean, I think I have a pretty pessimistic view of the world. My apologies. Take it up with my parents. Um, you know, I just my mind always goes to, why are you saying this? Like, I mean, are we just doing this out of some narcissistic self? Anyway, but that's for free. Feel free to edit that out. Um, but I just care deeply about, I think that this is easier for women than men, and that's not always true. So nobody starts sending hate mail to the PO box.
We're getting
But
canceled on so many levels.
You know what?
yeah,
Actually,
sorry guys.
actually, you know what? Our lives are pretty boring. Hate mail would be pretty awesome right now.
Hey,
So
Yeah.
like, bring
somebody
it.
somebody
Yeah.
decided to write us. But I think particularly for men, I would classify myself as a man's man. I've, sadly have had some, been violent in my past, and, like to, as my dear friend says, pick up heavy things and set them down as I'm trying to take some dominion over fitness and nutrition in my older life. But I care about men being able to be vulnerable. And I'm not talking about affirming dysfunctional behavior or negative behavior. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about, hey, dude, I'm trying to figure out how to stay married to my one wife for my whole life. Or I'm trying to figure out how to be a great dad to my kids. Because those are the pursuits I'm on. I think there's so many pictures out there. And then what does it look like when what you wanted, the guest you mentioned earlier? I mean, my heart just breaks for him because, I like I again, forgive me. I think I shared in the first one, March 2014, my wife and I find ourselves at a crossroads. And we're both like, dude, I'm good if we just call this thing. This is easier without trying to do this marriage thing, So my heart, not only this struggle that we've been talking about that's common to us all, but also what happens when the life you thought, that baby that came into your life, that child, that kid you adopted, that whatever that you thought was going to be this, turns out to be that. I just care most about people, understanding they're not alone and being in situations like I found myself in, or Tyler, your friend, and many, many others, and the same for, men just in general, but for them and their marriages, keeping marriages hot. And I don't even know why I said the word hot. I felt really awkward once that came out. I meant to say the word thriving, but
That sounds
I kind of want your marriage to be hot, because I want your wife to raise her hand
Let's go.
after 25 years and say married. Come on,
That
man.
sounds like a
So-
spin-off podcast, Tyler.
I mean, look, I want my
Keeping
wife to
marriage
have
hot.
our marriages hot as opposed to thriving. Like I prefer that. You know what I mean?
I'm going to give a hearty amen to that. I came up with it and I felt awkward. I felt like, I was, a quick story. I was asked to do the announcements at church, actually about a year ago. It was Christmas time. And I'm an extreme introvert, which most people that meet me or have seen me in public, they think I'm lying to them, but it's absolutely true. But I was handing it off to a greeting time after the announcements. And I started that section by saying to all the introverts in the room, I'm ashamed of myself. And then, of course, I sent them to a greeting, which is the worst time. It is the most unsufferable, whatever it is, time of a church service is the greeting. So, so the fact that I said hot, I just want to apologize right off the rip, maybe to myself. I'm not sure,
man.
but
Immediately I thought I have work to do in my marriage. So it was great, man. It was
well,
really
hey,
kind of helped
ask my wife how attracted she is to me after me being a bit of a dumbass. Whoops, I probably can't say that word. Sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut that out. For being an idiot making a poor choice earlier today. You should ask her about that. I'm sure
Oh, I was
hot is
just
like,
hey,
that's in the top 3 words she'd use
I was just in
today.
that I was just in that club actually. It's called a schmuck club. But there's
Yep.
there's things
Yes,
that
sir.
and in the end, I think the thing that I learned from that is it doesn't matter my intent of what I say or do,
Mm,
but hurts your wife's feelings.
gosh.
Stop doing it.
So true. So true.
Stop doing it.
Yeah.
I just want to, I really just want to, you know, we're kind of reaching the end of our time, and I want to highlight what you said there at the end, talking about your concern for men, or your, desire to help people just be better husbands and fathers and sons and friends, and and
Yes.
because that's the journey you're on, and I love that sentiment. I think that's the spirit of the conversations that we're having tonight, right? Is how to, and this is why I value this time on this podcast, right? Because if there's 100 people listening, or one, which is probably closer to the one than the 100, but the reality is, if I'm walking away feeling like I've learned something that will help me be a little bit better, a better husband or father or
Yes.
son or brother on some level, then this has been time well spent. And I've just loved our conversations, man. I could do this every week, talk to Gordon every week, Mike, because
I know. He actually dropped some hints for a round three someday.
Hey,
But I
I'm
mean,
not falling for that trick. I'm not
no,
falling. I'm
I
not
mean,
doing that.
there's a force at play, gentlemen, and we all feel it. And you can call it entropy, right? There's there's a force at play that doesn't want us to be better,
Yeah,
that wants us
Absolutely.
to be casual, that doesn't want us to be careful, that wants us to mail it in, right? To assume, to put it on someone else. And I think that concern is the catalyst for this project.
yeah,
Tyler and I, we want to fight against that with all that we've got in
Yes.
our own lives. And if we can put
Yep.
it on wax and put it out there to people, and it helps them pick up and fight, because here's the bottom line. Gordon, you are who you are, thanks in large part to who you married, but
Amen.
you are who you are, and you're doing what you're doing because of choices you have made.
Mm.
And like, choose your own adventure books that we grew up reading. You could be
Yeah.
a different dude.
For sure.
You could be a different dude. You could have taken the hand that you were dealt, and you could have driven that thing into the ground.
Yes.
And there were times when the elevation was probably pretty low, right? Or the altitude was probably pretty low on
Yep.
that flight. But the bottom line is you choose. You choose to listen. You choose to respond. You choose to act, right? You choose to be better and not bitter. All of these things fight against that force. And
Yes.
it gives you strength to not only win that fight, but be of service to other people in their struggles. And that's the beauty of it, right? And that's the rich life.
Absolutely.
That's the
Yep.
rich life. The idea is that
Yep.
you have a footprint, and your choices have created a footprint, and what you have done matters to you, matters to those closest to you, but it goes outside of the DeWitt home into other people's lives. And the idea that somebody is getting on their knees at night, thanking them, thanking God for Gordon DeWitt, is kind of a cool thing, right? We don't do
It's an
it for
insanely
we
cool
don't do it
thing.
for that. We don't do it
Yep.
for the gram. We don't do it to shine our Christian apples and say, check this out. But man, if we could lighten the burdens of other people,
Yep. Yeah. Help
that's
people
that's
get
pretty
unstuck. You know what I mean? Like, I
that's
just
pretty
think
cool.
about God's goodness and faithfulness to me, that you're absolutely right. The dominion that he gives each person, to trek their lives and out in whatever way that they do. And the fact that, when I'm sane, I choose to reciprocate, what God has given me. is all glory to him, because I, yeah, I'm deeply immature. And I think there's so much of men that, especially younger men today, that say, well, once I clean this up, or once I stop doing this, then I'm going to do this.
Mhm.
I think what the three of us have described, and you two for, 300 episodes now or whatever. Sorry that I don't know the episode count.
Oh, I like 300. 300 sounds really good.
300, number one on Spotify. That's what I heard anyway. That we're describing a life that, and it really is the picture of God with us, that not Emmanuel, but what God does when we come to relationship with him, is that we're describing that we're doing both. We haven't cleaned anything up, but if there is good, it's God's work. It's him doing that. He gets the glory. We're still in progress, but we're not going to let the fact that this isn't fixed and cleaned up and right and perfect and mature to actually do what he's called us to do, to use my language from earlier, to accomplish his purposes. I'm reminded that one of the big tenets when I talk about specifically the marriages for parents with kids with disability or chronic medical illness, the divorce rate's 92%. And the fact that God would pair me with a wife, undeserving, blackest heart ever, can be a person that you don't want anywhere near you. The fact that God would give me this gift, and that her and I together would make a decision that we're not going to be a statistic, that we're going to fight, like you just said, that we're not going to be lulled to sleep. I'm old, so I'll use an old illustration. We're not just going to be that frog in the pot that, wakes up once the water's like, well, what happened? And certainly there've been times like that, but overall trying to live a life in how we walk out what God has called us to, that is trying to get people off the path of dysfunction or to destruction onto at least seeking health, or seeking something positive in what's right and true in their life, versus just letting them, well, not my problem. Trying to actually, from our own circumstance and what we've experienced and our own brokenness, and how can we use that brokenness? How can we open up the, doorway, or how can we shine light on our brokenness to help people get unstuck, or, realize all the things that, we've been talking about throughout this podcast, that's true about them and true about how God feels about them.
Gordon, I'm going to bust down this door and come running out like I've been at some retreat or something. And Kelly's going to be like, what happened to my husband? Right? When I hear you, it makes me want to bring flowers home. It makes me want to open the door. It makes me every time I go to a wedding, I walk away with this idea of cherish. Yeah. It's like, man, I'm not good at that. Yep. But that when I hear you, I'm not okay with letting this just fall apart. And I want to fight. I want to fight to be that husband, that father, that coworker, that friend, that disciple, right? All of those things. So I appreciate the reminder. I appreciate the feeling that comes with those words.
I think we get stuck as men. Thank you. That, again, kind of you to say that I said something positive. Again, son of a truck driver here. Mr. Class, Mr. Scholar over here. I think that there's so much of being unwilling to say that stuff's broken, and to say that it's my fault, that I own that, even if someone else clearly owns it, to take responsibility for it and ownership of it, and not let it coast, like you're saying. Someone said to me recently that my wife and I are in the danger zone, because we've been married 26 years. And, kids are leaving, and that's when, I guess Hugh Jackman and others have a similar period of time that they've been married. But I just think, like, man, I want to give my wife some of what she's given me. Like, we talked about this in a kind of a before I came on the podcast. I went through a devastating separation in my previous career. And, I was not someone that anyone would want to be around for several months after that happened. I remember, Tyler, hearing you talk about your friend and Mike talk about your friend. There's a guy named Chad Robichaux who owns an organization called Mighty Oaks Foundation, and he uses faith-based solutions to help veterans basically not, again, I don't know if I can use these words, but basically not kill themselves, and get them on back to their path of being productive in their family, in work, and all of that. And he tells a story in his testimony about sitting on a couch after being separated from his wife and saying that, I thought the best thing that I could do for my family was to end my life. And man, that stuck me. Like, again, that those moments you can feel the Holy Spirit, just like, as I talked about Bob Hartman and being saved that night at a Petra concert, that the 2,000 people weren't around. It was just me in that room. That moment was for me. I can remember a time in September of that year, after I had left, and just, I'm in it, dude. Like, I'm deep, I'm down bad, to say what, probably the kids today don't say, but a few generations ago say. And my wife had, when I say every reason, I don't mean every reason. God has protected me from some of my own stupidity and desires. But she had plenty of cause, if you will, to leave me. I was being terrible to everyone, not in destructive ways, but just emotionally isolated, deep in my own stuff. And I remember setting out in the garage, and it was in September, and she walks out, and I'm ready for her just to lay into me, and she had every right to do so, like every right. And man, all she said to me was, every time I get frustrated with where you are right now, I'm going to pray for you. And dude, you want to talk about, like, I'm getting emotional talking about it right now. Like, it was the most, I don't know how to put this into words, but it was the most opposite thing to happen to what I thought was going to happen. And, man, if I could give her back over our next 25, 40, 50 years of what she gave me that day, and several times before over our married life, man, I would consider that success. I would consider that success, and that I would have paid back some of my debt that she says I don't owe. But like any wise man, I'm holding in my own record. So to be paid off, my own register, if you will. Yeah, so right. But man,
I just think. Yeah. I love, thank you for letting us in on that. And I know that's a difficult thing, right? It's, I talk about being real and being authentic. It's not like that's Gordon DeWitt top 10, right? Mm. And I think where just like, if life was a movie and I was watching that scene in your life's movie, that line, those words, where does that come from? Right? Because like the stage is set. If I'm watching it as an outsider, she's going to come in and here we go. Right? Yep. Gordon's been a bad boy and she's going to let him know. And she says that. That's just a remarkable. We talk about hinge moments, Tyler, right? Yep. We talk about the little thing that happens that changes everything, and boom. that's about as good as it gets.
I love it, man.
She is remarkable.
I mean, this has been such a fun night, and I've just, I was telling Mike, I'm like, before we got on together, the last time was fun. We laughed, I think I got emotional a few times. I learned a few things, and I feel like tonight was just as much fun and informative. And I really believe, like, when I have notes written down of things that the both of you have said that are personal to me, right? That I can say, this is where I need to apply this. I just feel like, man, what a powerful couple of hours that we've spent together. Gordon,
absolutely.
I know that last time we asked you what it means to be considered the richest man in town. We're asking that same question tonight, and given the bouts of dementia that you've battled with throughout the podcast tonight, we'll extend some grace if you
too many
yourself.
Concussions, too many concussions, guys.
But I do feel like, because for me, right, and Mike and I have this conversation about this question a lot, and for me, it's expansive, right? Because sometimes my answer is just what I dealt with today. You know what I mean? Like, that's my answer. Yes. And sometimes it's me zooming out a little bit and looking at what that whole picture looks like. But I want to ask you that same question again tonight, and hear your thoughts about what it means to you to be considered the richest man in town.
I'm going to go back to something I said earlier, I think, which hopefully isn't the thing I said at the end of the last episode. But someone said to me at some point, because my superpower is writing people off and forgetting that they exist, which is not a positive thing. For those of you that don't get sarcasm, that is not positive. I should not have that superpower. It's a bad thing. But a person said to me one time, they said, there's good in the worst of us and bad in the best of us. And I've tried to put that filter over my life when I think about myself. That gives me some language for myself. Like, we all could probably talk about our marriages when times we thought we were flying high, and our wives are just like, boy, you were pretty dumb right there. Or, my wife would use much kinder words than that, but I'm just giving you the direct version of what she meant. And so I think about, for me, what it means to be the richest man in town is to be willing to look at yourself, a true view of yourself, that, man, there's times that, I did it right. And I hope that's 51% of the time. And then, man, as much as I've been preaching to my son this week, here, at the end of this week, I make a complete fool of myself and am rude. When I don't need to be any time, but there certainly wasn't at that time. And then being willing to take responsibility. So I would say that what I described near the end there, of both can be true. Like, we have two hands. I'm holding in one hand that, man, I'm still trying to figure this out. Like, even though I may have said something that was helpful, I'm still so messed up, and God is still detangling spaghetti and my own stupidity and flesh and all of this. And then at the same time, I'm trying to take what has been true of my life and what I've experienced and what I've received from God, and help others with that. That carrying both of those things, I think are what in my mind, at least for this episode, is being the richest man in town. That I may have told you some cool phrase that you could put on Twitter, or whatever, X, whatever it's called. But at the same time, on the drive home, I'm going to get angry with someone because I felt disrespected, and I'm going to act like an idiot. So, and that's kind of the panoply of my life, if you will. So the diorama, if you will. Someone said that word today. So just see, look at that. I'm fighting back. That ginkgo biloba, Larry King. Come on, man. I'm reversing aging.
Prevagen. Get that boy some Prevagen.
Exactly. I would have to say that I think that, again, in my sane moments, for me, in my personal walk, that's what means being the richest man in town is to me. Because when I'm sane, one, I have an accurate view of myself. Two, I'm helping others. And because I'm flawed, I'm not standing in a place where I think my family needs to serve me, or make me feel good or make me feel better or give me what I want. When I'm in that space, I'm in a posture where I'm like, okay, babe, what do you need? Like, how can I serve you? I mean, my wife's in full-time school right now. So I've gotten a grand opportunity to go to that internal gym to learn how to build those muscles of, where she served me and our family for 20 plus years, to, hey, what do you need? How can I serve you? How can I help you accomplish what's ahead of you right now? How can I get you through the next 2 weeks till Christmas break? And so I don't know, man. I just feel like I'm just yapping about weird stuff. But
so Gordon, dad of the year right here. If I say me too more to my kids, or I get that, and husband of the year, if I can say more to my bride, what do you need? Right? How can I serve? I love that idea of holding them both. That's a pillar of this program, I think, Tyler.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because I think our world wants to live in this absolute, this dichotomy, this black, this white, this true, this false, and it's like, you know what? Let's hold.
Well, I love what you said, Gordon, because to me, as you were talking, I was just thinking, like, the world sometimes tells you that you're the richest man in town when you've got it all, right? And what you're describing is, I'm the richest man in town because I recognize that I'm a mess and I'm still willing to help work on myself and help others at the same time. And to me, that is richness, man. Like, that's the power that we all have, right? That everybody has, that when we're willing to kind of be introspective and say, okay, there's some stuff here that's just not right.
Yep. Great word.
But I'm willing to look at it, and I'm willing to put some energy into it. At the same time, I'm willing to reach out and try to lift others to a different place as well, understanding that work will help me get where I need to be at the same time. And it's life is interesting, and I love what you said. I think for me, that's such a great visual of what it means to be the richest man in town. So I appreciate that answer.
And God is big enough.
It's big enough.
Amen. Amen.
Gordon, it's been an absolute blast, man.
Thank you guys.
I love talking to you. This was a highlight tonight for me. I just love it, man. And we've had this break for a little while. And as Mike said earlier, this is what I need. I needed this tonight, and I just am grateful for your words and for who you are.
And be quick,
the good, the bad, and the black heart, all of it, man. I'm grateful for all of it, bro.
Dude,
be quick to go back to
such a mess.
Go back to your wife and ask what she needs, because we've had you for a couple hours.
Well, and and if I were to throw one highlight in it, like that I think is true for the three of us, and anybody that's stuck and saying like, well, that was great to hear, but I don't know how to apply that to my life. Man, the fact that you shared that you're dismissing your calendar, I don't even know what to call it, questions or your reminder to review your day, like that, dude, that's like, that just like gives me like, it almost gives me a heart hug. You know what I mean? Because like all those times that I'm like, all right, I'm doing this, I'm journaling, I'm, blah, blah, and then I just am like, yeah, dude, I'm going to like lay here and watch YouTube shorts for the next 9 hours. Like, dude, so good. So
step on that scale.
Guys.
Eat the turkey, eat the mashed potatoes, step on the scale, keep score, and try to get better.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. No, thank you guys. It's been a true honor for me. Thank you for even asking. It's very kind of you guys to ask a low life like me to be on and share some things. So I'm really grateful, guys. It really has been an honor. I mean that.
Yeah, Mr. DeWitt, screen your phone calls, man, because we will get our guy. We are the mountains of Northern California, and we will get our
so
guy.
Good. So like the Mounties, man. Jesus always gets his man. That was, so good, so good.
Man.
People need to search that on YouTube. Please put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Whatever that Sunshine Band or something like that, but that's SON, not SUN. So
I love it, man. Well, hey, Gordon, tell the family that we appreciate them sacrificing you so you could hang out with us. We appreciate that.
And here's to an incredible basketball season for your boy. He's worked hard.
Oh, hey, man.
Enjoy that.
Our hearts are full, man.
Yeah.
Lord's good. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Right. Thanks, Gordon.
See ya.
Yeah.
To my big brother George, the richest man in town.